The storm threw him into the sea. I surfaced fast, caught between the breakers as he went under. The ship didn't stop. It disappeared into the black like it had never carried him at all. He struggled once, twice, then nothing. I sang without thinking. One sharp, broken note, enough to bind the current around him, enough to keep him from sinking for good. I dragged him onto the lowest stone ledge where the tide still reached, but the sea couldn't steal him back. He gasped for air, shivering. I stayed hidden, body half submerged, watching him. He didn't know I was there, but my song still clung to him like salt in his blood. By morning, he was alive but barely moving. I stayed close all day, slipping under the waves whenever he stirred. When night fell, he managed to crawl further up the rocks, collapsed near the base of the cliffs. I drifted just offshore, listening to his breathing scrape against the wind. He was supposed to die. Instead, he slept, and I didn't leave. He didn't move for 2 days. I brought him water from the tide pools, slipping it close when he slept. He barely drank. By the 4th day, he crawled toward the cliffside. I followed in the surf, careful not to show myself. When he fell, I sang just once, a low hum, and the tide pushed him toward the shallow rocks where he wouldn't break himself worse. He didn't understand it, but he stopped fighting it. A week passed before he built a fire. He found driftwood, sharp stones, frayed rope. I watched from the waterline as he wrapped his hands in cloth and fought to keep the flame alive. Every time the fire dimmed, the tide pulled back, giving him more time. He never thanked the sea. He didn't know he should have thanked me. The 2nd week, he started looking at the water differently. Not with fear, with questions. He stood ankle-deep at the edge some nights, staring into the waves as if expecting something to rise up and answer. Sometimes I thought he saw me. Sometimes I almost let him. On the 17th night, he carved something into the sand. Not words, a mark, 3 rough lines over a circle. It wasn't human language. It was close to ours. I dragged myself closer when he turned away, studying it under the silver light. He dreamed of something he couldn't name, something pulling him under even while he stayed above. By the end of the month, he had a shelter built from driftwood and rope, a lean-to against the rocks, high enough to stay dry, low enough to stay hidden. I floated offshore, waiting for the night he would stop needing it, waiting for the night he would need me instead. The 2nd month came colder. The tides shifted, winds tore across the cliffs. He stayed curled near his fire, coughing into his arms when the smoke grew too thick. I watched from the rocks, closer every night. By the 3rd week, Hungja hollowed his frame. He stumbled gathering driftwood, collapsed near the water's edge. I broke the surface without thinking. My hand reached for him. He lifted his head, saw nothing but the wind, but he shivered like something had touched his bones. I brought fish to the shore after that, left it near the high stones before vanishing back into the surf. He found it every morning, ate it without asking where it came from. He didn't need to know. Not yet. The 4th month, I sang again. Only once. A low hum hidden under the crash of the waves. He stood at the shore, stiff, fists clenched at his sides. He heard it. I knew by the way he looked straight into the dark and didn't move. He started leaving things on the rocks. A broken knife, a woven string, half of a candle burned low. Offerings. I left them untouched. But I stayed closer to the cove after that, watching, waiting, breathing the same heavy air that tied him to me tighter each night. One evening he spoke into the wind.
I know you're there.
I drifted under the surface, heart thundering harder than the tides. I didn't answer, but I didn't leave. The 5th month, I found him carving again, this time deeper into the stones themselves, the same rough circle with 3 slashes through it. A calling mark, ancient, older than anything human hands should have known. The night after, I left him a gift, a shard of coral, sharpened, thin, and glowing faint blue in the moonlight. I placed it where the waves would touch it but not wash it away. He found it at dawn, held it like he already understood, and from that day, he stopped looking inland, only out toward the place he knew I waited. I wasn't the only one who had been watching. The sea grew restless near the cliffs. Currents pulled wrong, shadows moved where no fish swam. The 7th month, they surfaced, slick tails, pale hands, eyes blackened by the deep. 3 of them. They stood half-shrouded by the foam, speaking words no human ear could hear, but I heard them.
Break it, or drown with him.
I stayed between him and the tide that night, silent, waiting, choosing. They came back the next full moon. Closer. Hungrier. I warned him the only way I could. I left no gifts. I left no song. I stayed hidden beneath the surf, humming the low growl that made fish scatter and waters curl away. It wasn't enough. He waded into the tide that night, calling,
"If you're real, don't leave me alone."
I broke the surface once, just long enough for him to see my eyes, just long enough for the bond to seal. By morning, they knew what I had chosen, and the hunt began. We moved inland. He carried supplies on his back. I carried water against my skin, trying to keep the ocean from drying out inside me. Every mile from the coast felt heavier, every breath sharper. They followed, leaving broken shells on the trail, dragging seaweed across stones. He grew thinner, I grew quieter. But we didn't stop. When he collapsed one night by the river's bend, I sang again, not for him, for the water, begging it to stay with him a little longer. The river dried before winter. He built a shelter from driftwood and tarps stolen from the old fishing docks. I slept curled beside the riverbed, breathing shallow. He slept with one hand always resting near me, protecting me, even now. He learned to listen to the sounds I made, the hums, the clicks, the long silences that stretched like nets between us. I learned to trust the way his hands moved, offering food, offering fire, offering the space to heal, not pushing, not demanding. The world grew smaller around us, but we stayed alive. Together. Spring brought the rivers back, the earth softened. The fish returned to the tides. I could have left then, slipped back to the sea under the weight of the thaw, forgotten him before the song's bond swallowed us whole. But I stayed. Even when my bones ached for salt water, even when my heart begged me to run before it cost him too much. He never asked why I stayed, and I never asked if he regretted it. Some things are too sacred to speak aloud. By the 10th month, the deep ones came again. They didn't scream this time, didn't tear at the cliffs or drag the tide across the stones. They stood on the distant shore, silent and watching, waiting for the bond to break under its own weight, waiting for me to realize that love without a home was just another kind of drowning. He built stronger walls around our shelter, higher fires. I sang less, dreamed more, dreamed of the ocean's pull, dreamed of his hands pulling me back each time I tried to slip away. The sea wasn't done with me, but neither was he. They gave me a choice under the blood moon.
Return, or watch him drown by the next tide.
I found him sleeping in the half-light, curled against the fire. He looked smaller then, human, breakable. I slipped into the water, heart pounding against my ribs. Let the waves pull me deeper, let the cold strip away everything I had held. But when I surfaced again, it wasn't the tide that called me back. It was his hand reaching for mine across the rocks. No words, no force, just the choice I had already made. They didn't leave. They stayed offshore, singing songs meant to tear me apart. He heard them. He learned to cover his ears, learned to keep the fires burning high. I learned to hum louder than their songs could reach. We weren't safe. But we were together. Some nights I caught him looking at me the way men look at the sea. Full of wonder, full of fear, full of the kind of love you don't survive without bleeding for it. By the first full year, the deep songs faded. The bond stayed. Grew roots that wrapped around us both until we couldn't tell where the sea ended and we began. He built a pier out of driftwood into the shallows. Not a trap, an offering. A place where I could sit with the tide against my skin without having to choose between land and water. We didn't speak about what we lost. We spoke about what we still had, and it was enough. He never asked for my song. He never demanded the magic I once had. He loved the broken shell of me, the half-dry, half-lost, half-remembered creature who stayed. Some days I sing, just to hear the ocean answer. Some nights he hums a tune I taught him, not knowing the meaning, only feeling the bond pull tighter around his chest. We built a life in the ruins the sea left behind. A curse, a blessing. A story only we will ever remember. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more inspiring stories and content.